Hi, and welcome to Tech Talk, where we look at technology insights worth discussing. I'm Ken Mingus, executive editor at Computer World. I'm here today with Computer World's Matthew Finnegan. The big topic, collaboration. Stick around. Okay, so Matthew, first of all, thanks for taking time to talk to me. I know it's late in the day over in Sweden, in the Sweden Bureau for Computer World. There's been a lot going on in collaboration the first 2 or 3 weeks of January. Microsoft's had some announcements, Google's had some announcements, and I just thought it'd be a good time to touch base with you real quick and see what's going on with each of these companies and maybe get an idea for what's coming up in the year ahead. So. Why don't you tell me, let's start with Microsoft Teams because of course you had a story that's up now about something that was announced this week. And what's Microsoft up to with Teams these days?
Yeah, so there's been a couple of announcements so far this year already with Teams. First off, there was some features added for first-line workers. So first-line workers or deskless workers, frontline workers, there's a few terms being used, basically to describe employees who often in industries such as retail or healthcare, hospitality, or field service workers or so forth, who predominantly work, whose main computing device would tend to be a smartphone rather than a laptop or a PC. And it's a segment of workers which has typically been maybe underserved, or these sort of workers that have had less digital tools at their disposal than knowledge workers. And it's a segment which Microsoft sees as a large group of workers that it would like to cater to with Teams specifically. So there was new features for Teams announced, particularly around the mobile app. So location sharing and audio recording, and audio sharing, and a smart camera module to enable photos to be taken and annotated. So basically, it's to provide some of the features that employees might be more used to with almost like consumer messaging apps.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that I've noticed with Microsoft, I mean, obviously, with Teams being a part of the Office suite, obviously, a lot of companies, desk workers have those apps and have that suite on their desktop. But I think Microsoft, as you've noted, has been looking to push out Teams as far as it can in an effort to stay ahead of Slack and other big competitors. And so it seems like that, pushing it into mobile is one way to do that because it goes after an entire group of workers, as you say, frontline workers, first line workers that have been sort of ignored until now. Is that sort of your perception of what Microsoft's up to?
Yeah, exactly. So you could say that Microsoft is trying to expand the reach of Teams. Initially, from the launch, there has been a mobile app available, but it seems like the main focus has been on knowledge workers, similar to Slack as well, but with the added features for end users around mobile app functionality, but also to support IT staff in rolling this out to frontline workers, is helping to cater to that audience, really. Microsoft first started making some noises around this in September at Ignite, announced that it was bringing its Staff Hub schedule management tool into Teams. And so Microsoft clearly sees this as another opportunity to increase the adoption of Teams, basically.
Okay. And it's interesting because, as we're talking about Teams just this week, Microsoft at the is it BET Education Technology Conference in London? Is that yeah, and it had some announcements related to education. That's a story that we have up right now. So what is it that they're doing with what is it that Microsoft is doing around Teams in terms of the education field?
Yeah, so not long after Teams was launched in 2017, Microsoft started to targeted towards use within classrooms and for teachers to collaborate among themselves and with other members of school staff. And so at this year's BET conference, they've added, Microsoft has added more features for Teams for use in the education sector. For example, they've added integration with student information systems to enable grades to be automatically updated into these systems from Teams. There's grade marking available in mobile apps as well. So it's another example of how Microsoft is able to target and tailor Teams to specific use cases, and again to expand the reach of the platform in that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that was sort of announced in parallel with the Teams announcement was the hardware that Microsoft is pushing out there. Low cost 2-in-1s and laptops, I guess. The idea being that since Chromebooks seem to have such a presence now in the education field, this is a way for Microsoft to try to get in there and maybe make Teams and make its hardware more popular, open up another field that they really maybe haven't pushed into as much. Is that sort of how they're pitching the announcements around the hardware that they rolled out this week?
Yeah, as you say, it's low cost hardware that running Windows 10, which will resonate with that audience, and it's, as you mentioned, it's not just about the for Windows 10 specifically, or not only. It's also to gain a presence with in schools and also with students, so that they're used to using Windows devices when they go to university and when they're in the workplace afterwards, which Google has over the past few years with its Chromebooks gained, particularly in the US, in schools in the US, gained a strong foothold with Chromebooks, which then leads you onto G Suite and into the Google ecosystem. So it's an interesting marketplace for both of them.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess if you get them young and carry them through to college and then into the workplace, it's one way to expand, if nothing else, mind share. It's just interesting in passing how Apple 10, 15 years ago seemed to have such an entree into the education market, and now it looks like it's Google with Chromebooks and Microsoft with Teams and its hardware that are kind of battling it out. Speaking of Google and G Suite, you had a story, I believe it was last week, about some changes that Google's been making to pricing on G Suite, which is sort of interesting. And so I wanted to ask you about that, because obviously, I think Google would like to see G Suite as the, perceived at least as the big alternative to Office 365 or whatever Office suite companies are using. So what were a little bit of the details there on the G Suite changes that Google announced?
Yeah, so Google's increased the subscription price for G Suite Basic and G Suite Business. G Suite Enterprise version, I believe, is staying the same, but there's around a 20% increase in the basic and business subscriptions. So the reasoning behind this is that in recent years, Google has added, I think, Google Hangouts Chat, Google Hangouts Meet, this Team Chat and video conferencing applications, as well as some other tools have been added to G Suite for free. So this is apparently the first price increase in the decade or so since G Suite or Google Apps or various names has been available. So it seems, from analysts spoken to, it seems like a reasonable increase given the growing maturity of G Suite, and especially as it's grown to, I think it's 4 million users now. So and it can even sort of reflect positively on Google's proposition, because typically it's been seen as the sort of the cheaper alternative to Office 365. But by increasing the price, can even sort of give the perception that this isn't that it's on the same. It can go toe to toe with Office 365 in a lot of ways now.
Yeah, it's interesting that the whole idea of bumping the price up is the sort of thing that conveys the message that this is not just sort of some knockoff free or cheap alternative. That there's value in G Suite that that companies would find in comparison to Microsoft Teams. And so it's sort of interesting that by bumping the price up, you at least convey the perception that G Suite's a real player here.
Yeah, that's been the feedback I've sort of been hearing so far, and it just sort of testament to how G Suite has grown as a product, but also in terms of the growth of adoption in recent years. It's still some way off Office 365. I'm not sure how easy it is to compare the adoption figures, but Office 365 is still by some way the leader in the field, but it shows how G Suite is becoming continually getting more of a stronger competitor.
It's a more serious rival. Yeah. I can understand that. I wanted to ask too. You had written recently. We've been trying to keep an eye on Workplace by Facebook, or what we like to call Facebook's Workplace, which drives them crazy. But Workplace by Facebook, and one of the things that the company had announced or has been pushing lately is this customer win with Nestle. That they are embracing. I guess they're phasing out Salesforce Chatter and moving toward Facebook Workplace. Based on that and other reporting you've been doing on Workplace, do we see in the year ahead that Workplace might actually emerge as more of a rival to, say, Teams and G Suite and in terms of collaboration, maybe Slack, or is Workplace still sort of evolving and growing slowly? Any sense on what's going on there?
Yeah, it's been interesting to see what's been going on with Workplace. The Nestle deal was some good publicity for Workplace. Obviously, during 2018 was a difficult year for Facebook.
Among other things, yeah, for sure.
So it's another major customer win for Workplace. I believe it's over 200,000 employees at Nestle are already moved on to the platform. They've formerly used or are now phasing out Salesforce Chatter, and are expecting to have the entirety of the workforce on Workplace over the course of this year. So Workplace has had quite a few large customer deployments. It's hard to get an idea of this in terms of overall adoption of Workplace. Like the most recent figures, I think, were in October 2017. 30,000 organizations, I believe, are using Workplace. So it's a while ago since there was an update there, but there's been a sort of steady stream of customer announcements over the past year or so. And so there definitely seems to be interest in the platform. And as you said, it's also been interesting to see how the platform is starting to develop itself. Obviously, it's launched as a product which is similar to the consumer social network. But as time goes on, the features are added, it's starting to diverge more and more from the consumer product as you get more like integrations with third-party business software and so forth. It's becoming more and more. It can be used often as an intranet, but also to and for sort of top-down communications. But it seems to be gaining more traction as I think for workflow and for going towards supporting productivity and so forth.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I was sort of only joking a little bit about the Facebook's Workplace and Workplace by Facebook, but if you are trying to set Workplace apart from Facebook, the social media platform that's had a fair amount of bad press in 2018, then calling it Workplace by Facebook puts the emphasis on Workplace and not Facebook. So maybe that's what they're trying to do there. I just sort of realized that. It's interesting too in terms of, obviously these are companies that are building and trying to expand their presence. But you had a story last week, I think, about IBM and the fact that they're kind of pulling the plug on Watson Workspace, which was, I guess, their efforts to try to move into team chat. And do we have any idea? Was there any warning that IBM was going to pull the plug on this? I mean, was the writing on the wall, or did this one just kind of come out of the blue?
Yeah, this I suppose this wasn't exactly unexpected. You could say workspace. Trying to make sure I don't get workplace and workspace.
Yeah, it's Watson Workspace. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think it's almost 2 years. I think since Watson Workspace launched, and it just never really gained traction in the market, in the team chat collaboration market. Obviously it's a busy market, and there's a lot of Slack, Teams, Cisco WebEx, Teams, etc. There's a lot of big players in the market, and there just never seemed to really be the appetite for Watson Workspace. It didn't really seem like IBM pushed it very hard, and as IBM said, it didn't really gain the traction with customers, and they've decided to discontinue it. So there was never really much noise in the market around Workspace, but then the writing was on the wall, I guess, towards the end of last year, when it was announced that IBM was selling a lot of its software assets, particularly around collaboration. So I think it's IBM Connections, Notes, and Domino were sold to an Indian company, HCL, for $1.5 billion or something in that region, which includes a variety of software platforms. So after that sale, it's a strong indication that that's not where IBM is focusing its attention going forward. So to carry on with Watson Workspace, it seemed like his days were numbered, I guess, after the HCL announcement.
Right. So for the 3 or 4 customers out there on Watson Workspace, your days are numbered. Okay. And finally, no discussion of collaboration would be complete without checking in on Slack. And I think I've seen stories, and that this may be the year, or this is the year they're planning to finally do an IPO. Is that correct? Am I right on that?
Yeah.
Do we know that for sure, or is it just rumored still?
There's been reports in various publications that Slack is preparing to it's not an IPO actually. Apparently, it's a direct listing,
Okay.
which is what Spotify did last year as well. So it's a less usual route than an IPO for a public listing, but it's sort of generally favoured by companies that don't need to raise a lot of additional funding or to raise their profile, neither which seems maybe Slack perhaps needs to do. So I mean, this isn't confirmed by Slack, but this is what seemed to be indicating going forward. So it seems like there will over the next couple of months or so, I think that's the main focus for Slack, really.
Okay, great. So we've sort of covered the gamut here, I think. Anything going on around collaboration that we haven't touched on here that I should know about before I let you go? I just don't want to let you go if there's anything else floating around out there we should mention.
I think those are the main things. I mean, there's been a lot the past few weeks and the past couple of months really around Microsoft Teams, and there's a big push for Microsoft here, and you kind of see the impact of Microsoft bringing to bear. Like it strengthened development resources to really push this platform. So it'll be again an interesting year to see the competition in the team collaboration chat marketplace.
Yep, I guess when the 800-pound gorilla weighs in, everybody has to kind of move over and adjust. Okay, well, listen, Matthew, thanks a lot. That really does help me understand what's going on in collaboration right now, what's been coming out even in the first 2 or 3 weeks of January. Obviously, we'll be checking back with you to see what's going on as the year goes by. Anyway, thanks a lot. I appreciate the info.
Okay, thanks, Ken.
All right, and collaboratively, for now, that's a wrap.